Good afternoon, fellow gardeners. It's a beautiful day. I'm Sandra Shave. I'm co-president of the North Fulton Master Gardeners. And today I'm going to be covering gardens of the Master Gardeners. It was a great way for me to learn so much from all of these, from these four wonderful Master Gardeners. I've been an avid gardener all my life, but most of it was up in the state of Wisconsin, and it's very different from gardening down here. When I got here, you know, I tilled and made a little garden, threw some seeds in. They came up about 2 inches and then they all died. So I scratched my head and said, oops, I need to learn how to garden in Georgia. So I became a master gardener, and I've always loved gardening. So it's been a wonderful retirement opportunity for me. So today we're going to cover just a little bit of the design, just 2 slides on basic design, just to refresh you on what you really need to think about. And then we're going to be covering 4 gardens of the Master Gardeners: Vicky, Nilda, Robin, and Elizabeth. And as you can see, each of them has a different theme that I've labeled it with. Because they are different. So our class is, the objective is, I hope that you come away inspired with some new ideas about gardening, some new ideas about plants, and that you will see that gardening is as varied as the individual that is creating the garden. And I like to say the seeds we sow and the plants we grow tell the world who we are and where we've been. So there's the element of creativity that goes into the who we are. And the where we've been, you know, most of us, you know, if you live in metro Atlanta, a lot of people are from somewhere else, as I am from Wisconsin. And one of the things that I have brought to my garden is dahlias. I love dahlias in Wisconsin, and I wasn't sure you could grow them here because of the temperature change. But I read some articles and I found that you could grow them here, but you had to take some precautions. But now I have beautiful dahlias, as you can see, and they are blooming like crazy, and I absolutely love them. So the fun of gardening is in the creativity, the discovery, and we learn from our failures. And then, of course, we share the joy of our successes. So some basic principles of garden design is, first, you have to know your property. Where does the sun shine? Where doesn't it shine? And that changes throughout the season. So you want to be watching where the sun shines and doesn't shine during growing season. So whatever that plant's growing season is, you need to be mindful of whether it's going to be sunny or shading. And the other thing that goes along with that is trees. Trees can throw shade, but they can also, their roots can be very entangled. I have an oak tree in the front of my property, and you cannot stick a shovel in that ground until you get about 6 feet away from that oak tree, because the roots are so massive. And so what I do is I put pots out there, and I gave up on trying to grow plants there because they would die within 2 seasons. In my backyard, I have some black walnut trees. And while I'm careful what I plant there, I have figured out which plants I can grow under my black walnut trees, and the roots are not quite as dense, so they grow well. So you just need to be mindful of the light and the shade, your trees, other sources of shade, such as your neighbor's house, utility poles. If you're going to put, be sure to look up if you're going to plant a tree, know whether or not there is a utility pole there. Drainage and slope are really important. Because we have this clay, many of us have certain parts of our garden where the water might sit for a couple hours after a big rainstorm. I have an area like that on the side of my house. Grass will not grow there, but other plants will grow there. And there are some water-loving plants that you can plant, and just need to learn what those are. And you need to have access to water, because right now we're in a drought, and I don't know about you, but I'm out watering some of my plants every single day. Walkways, I guess that's part of completing your hardscape. If you're new to a home and you want to do some landscaping, figure out what hardscape you want first. Do you want to put some walkways or paths in your yard? Are you going to add to the patio? Are you going to put in a hot tub? Think through those things first and take your time to figure this out. Don't rush. You need to know how you're going to use your garden. How are you going to use your backyard, your front yard? How do you want to use it? I have grandchildren, so I need some green space where they can run and, kick a ball around. And then I'm mindful of what I plant in my landscaping area near where they play, because I know the balls go flying into the bushes. Add a little bit at a time. Don't take on too much. Be mindful of your investment, because you can spend a lot of money on plants and landscaping, and know how much time you have. If you're working full time and you don't have a lot of time to spend, go simple. If you have more time and really want to get into it, then you can totally go nuts. So to get started, you want to start with a general vision. And what I like to do is drive around and look at neighborhoods. So I like to look at neighborhoods that are nicer than mine. I like to look at older neighborhoods. I like to look at newer neighborhoods, just to kind of see what the plants are as they're young, and to kind of see what they look like as they get older. Visit some nurseries. I find Southern Living to be a great they've got some plant books that are great for getting ideas on plantings. And I love Pinterest. So you can just type into Pinterest, plants for the Southeast or perennials for the Southeast, and you will get more pictures than you know what to do with. And of course, attend our Master Gardener classes. Number 3, you want to decide on a focal point. Now I have a big deodar cedar in my backyard that's kind of the focal point, but then I also have a bird area next to it that's kind of a subfocal point. So it doesn't just have to be one area, but you can kind of create different spaces, as you will see in some of the examples. Start small, keep it simple. Okay, so we're going to move right on to our first Master Gardener, Vicky. And I call her her property flower power. And you don't see it so much in the front, but wait till you see most of the pictures are done from the backyard. You will see all her flowers, and she just has a beautiful, beautiful yard. When she started out, she only had a few trees, big trees in the backyard. And so she had a big lot to play with. So Vicki had been a master gardener since 2014. She started gardening because she was stressed out with her job and some personal things. And from there, she just fell in love with it. And she loves to have something blooming all the time. So her first challenge was these two big trees, and this isn't her backyard, but I put this in as example of roots. We know that a lot of big trees have big roots, and it's hard to mow around them. It's hard to plant anything under them. So what she did is she enclosed all those roots in a landscaping area. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a second. And she edged it with this black plastic edging, which made it easy to mow. So here you'll see the black plastic edging. She made it curvy, so these nice soft curvy lines. Here's one of her big trees back there, and you can see it's been years since this has been growing. And we'll come back and talk about this particular picture in a minute. Here's one of her other big trees, and you can see that she's put that shade to good use and has installed lots of shade-loving plants. She's also incorporated walkways where they walk frequently to keep people in rather than tromping the grass. This is another view of that same area from the other side. So you can see she mixes the lawn, etc. So the next thing she did was planted the perimeter with large flowering bushes. So azaleas, camellias, hydrangeas, and some Japanese maple. So along the back fence here, she has a hydrangea. She also does this wonderful thing with a lot of her ground. You know, she has mulch in some places, but in a lot of areas, she's incorporating ground cover. And we'll cover that a little bit more later on, but I have learned the value. That's one thing I learned from Vicki, among many things, is that ground cover can be such a time saver, and it always looks good. So here she has azaleas. These pictures were taken in June, so the azaleas were done blooming. I think this is a camellia over here, and they tend to bloom more in the fall for winter or in the early spring. And here again, she has used ground cover, which is a dwarf mondo grass. So it's brilliant. She doesn't have to schlep mulch in there all the time to keep that looking fresh and weed free. So here's a lady in red hydrangea. You'll notice that I'm going to talk a lot about individual plants that were new to me that I thought were really cool. So hopefully you'll like them as well. This is a lady in red hydrangea. She keeps it in a pot to control the pH because it's a pinkish reddish. It likes that little bit more acidic soil in order to maintain that color. So here's the blossom. It is a lace cap hydrangea, and it will turn darker pink as it moves through its life cycle in the month of June. And it's called Lady in Red primarily because the stems are red. So when it loses its leaves in the fall, and actually the leaves turn red in the fall, but when all the leaves drop off, you now have this wonderful winter interest of these red stems rather than, just brown or gray. She has this beautiful she shed. I have she shed envy. And she's painted a color that matches many of the flowers blooming around it. And again, she's incorporated these beautiful curvy lines. So she creates a nice landscaping area along the edge. Vicki has what I would call a cottage garden. So she has incredible flowering perennials. You'll see here the orange and yellow rudbeckia. She has the pinkish purple echinacea. This is stone crop, again, a wonderful ground cover that grows easily. And I love her antique bicycle that really gives it that antique-y, cottagey feel. Here she's got the endless summer hydrangea in the back. She's got a lace cap hydrangea. This is echinacea, a really nice pop. These are some gardenia, not gardenia, geraniums. So they're a perennial geranium. She's got camellia back here. Yeah, and some more stone crop covering the ground. More flowers. She has daylilies. She is an absolute daylily lover. You can see how she buys name brand hybridized daylilies. So they are absolutely gorgeous. Here's some peaches and cream daylilies, and no cottage garden would be complete without Shasta Daisies. Now, this, I believe, is the north side of her house. So she has hostas along the wall. This area gets a lot of sun because it's southern exposure, but closer to the wall, it doesn't get as much sun. So she has hostas and astilbes. Again, this is June. Astilbes bloom either in May. Mine bloom in May, hers bloom in June. They're just they only bloom for 3 or 4 weeks, but they're a beautiful, beautiful plant. And here's more lilies. I mean, look at the unique lilies that she has. This is called Orange Trail, and we have Watermelon Summer and Southern Coral. Look how beautiful that is with the ruffly edges. Apple Spring, really, really gorgeous. And these are just the place, she calls them ditch lilies, but still they're beautiful. And they bloom at a slightly different time than many other lilies. So, and I have some of these as well, which I think she gave me, come to think of it. And they bloom for a very long period of time. And I love these yellow ones. I didn't catch the name of them. They're very prolific bloomer. I love that she has a lot of water features in her yard, which are great for the birds and the butterflies and the bees. They all need water. And here's a little closer up of this particular daylily. And this is the view from her patio. So it's a different, you get a slightly different view of the daylily. So can you just imagine sitting on this patio? And I have, Vicki and I sat here and drank some wine together. And it was just so lovely, so restful, so peaceful. You just feel like you're in a botanical garden somewhere. And she has some amaryllis. And these are just some of the other lilies that she grows. Something Special, Watermelon Summer. You can see that watermelon color, and Orange Trail. Now she uses hostas and cast iron plants in the area of deep shade. Now the cast iron plants are great because they're almost a waxy, heavy leaf plant that will maintain its rigid position. And contrast nicely with the variegated hostas, so that you're not just all one solid color. You get these different pops of green and variegated shades of green. Her favorite plant is the orange flame calla lily. And this picture does not do it justice. I mean, it was like neon. It was so bright and so colorful, really very beautiful. And I want to come back and recap on the ground cover, because this was such a great learning lesson for me, is that she plugs all these spaces with ground cover. That, again, this is dwarf mondo grass. You can do an entire lawn with dwarf mondo grass, and people have. Pachysandra is a little bit taller. It's not quite as densely growing. Pachysandra will get 5 to 6 inches tall. Again, great ground cover. And then this is a different type of sedum. And then this is, I think it's called golden golden line, something like that, sedum. But look at how brilliantly green that is and how it nicely contrasts with the blue of her pot and the variegated colors of her plant. She also incorporates a lot of yard art, which again is something that I had underappreciated how much of a value it brings to your yard. Now, her husband is an artist, so he took this old window pane and painted all these flowers on it. So she has flowers even when, you know, it's winter time. Her frog, a little butterfly watering bowl, her butterflies on her back fence, little bird bath, and again, see the stone crop here around it, another bird and butterfly bath tucked in among the flowers themselves. And her pots, she painted all her pots to match, so that this bright royal blue, so that they really pop with the green background, and they're, you know, they kind of contrast with or match with her she shed, and then her praying mantis, and at least he's got a head yet, and her little metal butterflies that actually come from the same tone of blue from her endless summer hydrangeas. So it really, the complementary colors there really enhance the colors of each. And then of course she has a little natural yard art as well, like many of us do. And some bright colors that she's added with iris and with amaryllis. And she has 2 fern leaf Japanese maples. This one's in her front yard, and then she has a big one in her backyard. And this is a Japanese maple also. I don't know what the variety is. And what she's planning to next is add more daylilies. She buys the Tim Bell. These are 2019. That was actually the year that we took all these photos. So she bought the latest batch of hybridized daylilies and is getting her patch ready to blossom with new daylilies. So her words of wisdom is that the garden is an endless works in progress, but also labor and love, that we tend to fall in love with plants at the garden center and then find a place to put it. I'm guilty. And then plan, yeah, you're supposed to plan, and then, yeah, it's kind of a joke because it really becomes an evolution. Your garden will change as the trees grow, and you need to move plants and you need to divide them. You know, perennials have to be divided every 3 to 5 years. And you might want to move plants because you just find that a particular plant doesn't work where you put it. So try to do your homework, try to put the right plant in the right place. My takeaways were to establish those boundaries first. That was brilliant. And put the tall plants in the back. That's kind of obvious, but sometimes not so obvious. And really pay attention to the sun versus the shade, and do that, you know, multiple times a day to make sure you know really how much sun that garden is getting. Garden art really makes it fun, and you can take it with you if you move. And think about ground cover and adding different kinds of ground cover. And I'll continue to talk about ground cover and some of the other gardens as well. And plant what makes you happy. If you love flowers, plant flowers. I know I do. And with that, Marty, are you there for questions?
Yes. All right. Our first question is, should one place a border of plants about a foot from a wooden fence, or just use mulch instead?
Would you repeat that again? Should one what?
Should a person put a border of plants about a foot away from a wooden fence, or just mulch there?
Just if 1 foot is all you have, I would find a small plant that you can, perennial that you can put along there as a border. Perhaps a type of grass, a small grass, not a big one, because those will get bigger with time. But, you know, you can cut some of your grass back too. That's not a bad idea.
Okay. All right. Next question. Any tips on separating iron plants?
You know, I have not put any iron plant in my backyard, but it's, so I don't have personal experience with that. I couldn't hear you, Marty. Could you repeat? I'm not hearing you, Marty. One more time and then we'll move on.
I think we've lost Marty's audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Marty.
Okay, what other types of plants are good for a cottage garden?
Oh, some of the native plants are wonderful. Coreopsis. I have even a solidago, better known as goldenrod. I have milkweed. Blue mist flower is blooming now. It's gorgeous. Gaillardia. Trying to think off the top of my head. You can always Google perennial cottage garden southeast, and it will give you lots of ideas.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, I'm going to move on. Any other questions that come, you can keep putting questions in and I'll cover them under Nilden's garden. We will, please put your questions in the chat box and we'll answer them after each garden. I forgot to say that at the beginning, my apologies. So Nilda's garden I called Feast Your Eyes because, wow, wait till you see it. So she bought her home about 30 years ago. Also, it's 3/4 of an acre and she has a lot of sloping. Vicky's yard was fairly flat, but hers is very sloping. And so that creates different challenges. So here's Nilda. She's been a master gardener since 2009. Her favorite plants are hydrangeas, Japanese maple. She has 17 different kinds in her yard. I didn't get what was the big deal with Japanese maples. And Nilda showed me what was so cool about them. The internal structure of the plant itself, the variation in the kinds of leaves and the different kinds of colors. And so I have grown a whole new appreciation for Japanese maples. And her inspiration is that she just loves it and that's her joy. So her front yard gives a very formal look. Whenever you do mass plantings like that, it creates a formal look. It looks like the gardens at Versailles, rows and rows of the same plant and the crisp edging. But she's also added some daylilies in the center for a little bit of whimsy and to break up that formal look. So she's got some liriope in the front, some English laurel, Nandina. I love this river rocks. She puts river rocks along the edge. And it creates this really crisp boundary, again, creating that formal look. And up by her house, I love this arrangement. It's all green and gold, but you can see what you can do without a flowering plant necessarily. You can create great interest. So this is a sunshine ligustrum in the back. And when that is in the sun, it is just brilliant, brilliant yellow. And this is a golden hinoki cypress cryptsite version. And it is dark green on the inside, and then the edges, it gets more golden as it works out to the edges. This is a black dragon cedar. You can see how dark green it is, so it kind of pops against the yellowish color of the other two plants. You've got a plum yew and a emerald and gold euonymus, and I believe this is a boxwood, just trimmed in a triangular shape. So you've got all these variations of green and gold that create what is a really pretty and a very interesting grouping near the front of her house. Now, we're going to mosey on around to the backyard. So picture you're at the front of the yard, and now we're going over to the right and we'll enter through a gate. But first, before I get to that, you can see what she started with. She had an absolute disaster in her hands. Look at this. Look at the scarring, open dirt, erosion, shrub trees, weeds. Can you imagine? I'd be like, oh my God, I don't know how she ever bought this property, but she clearly had a vision and saw the potential for what she could do. And look at this up closer to the house. Now she added a sunroom here. And so that, you know, took up a chunk of that, but still, you know, just wait till you see what she has done. So now starting over to the right of the fence that we're going to walk through, there's Nilda at the other end. Her yard is really like what you would picture an old Roman garden to look like. You know, she's this beautiful walkway, and on the right, she has these swags of ivy. Now, master gardeners do not recommend planting ivy. In fact, we try to get rid of it, but she controls it. She's very mindful. She said she plants it because her husband loves it, and she controls it. So you don't want your ivy, if you're going to have it, don't let it get out of control. It will kill trees. It will kill everything. She's got some Nandina, some Aucuba. Aucuba is great for growing in deep, deep shade. And here a little bit closer up is she's got these beautiful ivy swags. And look at the interest of this is a crepe myrtle. And you can see that again, I never realized there was such beauty in tree trunks and interest. Continuing up the sidewalk now, she's got hostas, some chartreuse colored heuchera, also known as coral bell, great plant that grows in the shade if you have a shady area. And Gardenia also grows great in the shade, and a little more ivy here. I love her little bunny. But look at this picture. I could almost frame this and put it on my wall. It's the Italian pot with the ivy streaming down and the bright blue hydrangea. And then she has these wrought iron archways in a couple of spots that just look so ancient Italian. They're just gorgeous. And there's her little bunny. And on the side of her wall, again, kind of continuing with that ancient Rome theme, you know, with the columns and the water ladies and the lion. But then she softens it a little bit with some Zen stones and stone crop to give it a little pop of green. And now we're going to come into our backyard. And I had to take this in multiple frames because the camera I had at the time didn't do a really good pano. So here's to the right. So gone is all that scarring, and it's replaced with patio pavers on the flat area on the bottom. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of tiering where she has put in landscaping. And again, she gets dappled sun back here. So she has to be real careful the type of plants that she incorporates. And you move over a little bit to the left and you see, you know, the tiering continues. This here in the front is one of her Japanese maples. It's actually a dwarf one that's in a pot, and it's variegated feather leaf. It's very, very pretty. And then way to the left is a room, a little bit shadier over here. So I apologize if it's difficult to see, but this wrought iron room. And we'll come back and talk about each of these and a little bit more. And then in the center that I skipped over is her focal point, and this beautiful waterfall with 2 little ponds on its way down. I love this. And then her decorative cranes that give it sort of that a little Asian look. And then these are Amarillo Carrots, a beautiful chartreuse plant that grows great in a pot. In fact, you want to grow it in a pot because the leaves will drape way down the sides of the pot and almost cover the pot. And there's her mermaid. And she names all of her people, her little pots and people out there. And this one is Dominique. And she's got the perfect perch. This is her red feathers Japanese maple. She's got some chartreuse heuchera underneath it that creates a great contrast between the red, a midnight heuchera here that kind of almost complements the red feathers. and then a pop of color with her Rudbeckia. Really such a beautiful feature. And these steps are just to the right of the waterfall. And again, she has a Crepe golden Hinoki cypress. And here's the ivory that runs up the steps. And again, you get the tree trunks of the Crepe Myrtle. Here's her room over to the left. She has several rooms. She likes to sit out in her garden and enjoy her handiwork and the peacefulness and just being surrounded by nature. And she's really made it fun. The street lamp has a story in that her and her husband used to have a warehouse that they rented out. And one of the companies that rented it, when they left, they left 2 or 3 of these street lamps left. They were just like fake street lamps that they used as props. And she put them in her yard. And you can see the sun hits it and makes it look like it's lit up. So, you know, it just creates a fun thing. And then she's got these mariachi guys that are about 3 to 4 feet tall. Again, they're playing the accordion and the violin. So you can pretend you're being serenaded while you're in the garden. And this peacock, which is about 4 feet tall. And then here's her room at the top of the hill. That is really, you can look down at her house from there. It's the top of her steps. It's really very gorgeous. Now, one of her favorite plants is this Ryuzan Japanese maple. So it's got the weeping branches, and her daughter loves it because she can hide in there. And it's even big enough for Nilda to hide in there. Her favorite hydrangea is the Butte Vendemois. Probably butchered my French accent. You know, hydrangeas mostly came from France. And this one is huge. You can see relative to her hand, that blossom is even bigger than the palm of her hand. It is a lace cap. I thought her edging here was really clever. That is wine bottles tipped upside down and put into the ground. And this is a drift rose. For those of you that love the Grumpy Gardener, I love the Grumpy Gardener. His real name, I think, is Steve Bender, and he writes the Grumpy Gardener column for Southern Living magazine. And he had an article in there not so long ago that said that drift roses are actually grow better in our climate than knockout roses do. So I now have a drift rose in my garden. And it looks just like this. It's sort of that peachy color, and it's really pretty. And I believe this is Phlox subulata. She's got several of them up here. Those will bloom in the spring, sometimes even over the winter. She has a lot of hydrangeas, as I said before, and I find a lot of master gardeners pair hostas with their hydrangeas. And you can see here the nice contrast between the darker green with the white tip and the lighter green of the hostas with the beautiful blossoms on them. And here's some more fun garden art. And this one is Maria. And she has a type of Coleus, a unique kind of shredded fingers, if you will, kind of Coleus that we sell at our garden fair most often. And she's got some candelabras of the same style. They look like the ones that were in Beauty and the Beast, and a little frog. And sometimes these things are just, you know, cleverly hidden in her landscape, but they're so cute and they add so much to the ambiance. A little girl holding her bunny rabbit. And I want to point out, oh, and I'm drawing a blank right now. I love this ground cover. I'll think of it in a minute. And she's got the gardenia and the chartreuse covered hosta and the heuchera and some more Amarillo Carrots. And one of her little angels by a seat, and another little angel. And this funny little bird, again in the pot with that cool plant, along with the Persian shield, and even some stone crop in the pot. And here a little butterfly with the Persian shield. And I love, she's got, this thing is like 7 feet tall. It's a tulip that will spin with the wind. And it's at the top of her garden, where her little room is, and it's gorgeous. She also has these, she's got the pots with the heads, and this is Felipe with his mop hair, but she also has big colorful pots. And she doesn't always have a plant in them. This one's got a little chick, but this bright burnt orange in the middle of her greenery really adds wonderful interest. Now, this is a pot that back in my early days of gardening, I would have thrown away or would have felt the need to paint. But, she's like, no, that's part of its interest. It's part of the antiquity feeling. It's part of the ambiance of her garden. And she has a, hydrangea growing in it. And hydrangeas grow really well in pots. I have one growing in a pot and it's doing just fine. And I love this. This is like 4 feet tall and 2 feet wide. And it sits back here in her garden and just looks really cool. And here's another one. And I think this is Calla. And she's got some pretty wild looking hair too. She's surrounded by ferns and more hydrangeas and hostas. And those are all shade plants, as is this oak leaf hydrangea. You can see the blossom on the oak leaf hydrangea is almost spent. It turns brown towards the end of its season. And this is Nostradamus with a beautiful hosta growing out of his hat. And back here, if you can see it, is Aucuba. Aucuba, again, grows really great in the shade. And another part where she's got some Ryope, and I believe these are boxwoods. And at the end of the row, though, is a pot with the Amarillo Carrots in it. And the chartreuse color against the burnt orange really makes it pop. And all her attention to detail, planting a little plant that pops relative to the other 2 plants around it. The ivy that goes up her walkway, she's trained it to actually come in at each step just a little bit. And here again is one of her Japanese maples. And she filled spaces. This is a dwarf monograss, which I'm sure really helps to hold the soil in place so that it doesn't erode, because this is at the top of her steps. And again, back in my youthful foolishness, I would have probably power washed this off. And it's like, this is beautiful. This is lichen and mosses growing on the sides of the rock. Again, adding to that beautiful antiquity prevalent in her garden. So her words of wisdom: work with what you have. Again, she had the slope that she had to work with. Create rooms, privacy is important, and she prunes like crazy. Nilda is from Argentina, and you have to picture her in an Argentinian accent, say, I prune everything. If you stand still long enough, I prune you too. So don't be afraid to prune your plants. They help to manage the size, and trust me, they will grow back. So there's beauty in the shades of green. If you plant extensive hardscape, best to get sometimes professional help. There's beauty in the tree trunks and beauty in the structure of the trees. Take advantage of them. One person's trash is another person's treasure. Get creative. And pots can really add a lot of pop of color. Marty?
Actually, Sandy, we were alerted to some audio, so I'm going to see if we can fix that, and I'll ask the questions. The plastic, I think this is going back to the first house. The plastic border, how deep is it, and does it stop the ground cover from spreading into the lawn?
Usually it does. Her black plastic looked to me to be about 6 inches deep. I bought some black plastic that is that I use. It's relatively shallow because it's easier to install, and I'm lazy. And but I think the deeper, and it does act as a barrier. Yes. Even my shallow one will act as a barrier.
Can you suggest best ground cover for shaded areas?
Well, the Pachysandra is great. Green and gold, which is a native ground cover. I have some of that in my backyard. I'm still growing. Lee, what's that little ground cover that I gave you some of? For some reason, I'm having a total mental block.
Ajuga? Ajuga.
What's that?
Ajuga?
Ajuga. Thank you so much. I love Ajuga. And it comes in a variety of colors. Let's see, the dwarf mondo grass, as I can't speak highly enough about that. It's a brilliant green. You never have to cut it. It only gets a couple inches high, and it fills in and will choke out all the weeds.
Okay. One of our attendees says, I have 2 garden beds with perennial gardenias, jasmine, and clematis. With annuals, I fill in around. I'm in my 2nd year of gardening and wondering if there's anything I should be thinking about doing now to help them thrive next year.
Well, you don't want to fertilize them this time of the year because you don't want to fertilize until it's growing season. But in the early spring, January and February, you could put out some fresh compost, black cow. Black cow is a sterilized cow manure. I like to put that on my shrubs and my perennials. And then as you see the shoots starting to come up, I hit mine with some 10-10-10 or other perennial fertilizer mix. If you haven't divided them recently, I think you said these were new. But remember, it takes 3 years for a plant to really get going. So don't get discouraged. We'll cover that in one of the other presentations. 1st year sleep, 2nd year creep, 3rd year leap. So give your plants 3 years, water them well. And, especially now, make sure they get watered, even in the wintertime, make sure they're getting water.
Okay. Is it okay to trim or shape a Japanese maple in the fall?
Oh, that you're going to have to leave to the Japanese maple experts, and that I am not.
Okay. Where do people get their garden art?
Oh, gosh. You can, just about any of the garden stores carry garden art. I see it all the time at Pikes. I live in northern North Fulton County. So Scottsdale Farms has a ton of it. Autumn Hills, at Lowe's, the big box stores, Walmart, they all have garden art. Just, I think I never looked at garden art before until I did this preview of the Master Gardeners gardens and saw how much garden art they used. I just never thought about it. But I think once you think about it, you will see it everywhere.
And at garden sales and craft fairs, you can find some handmade.
Exactly. Antique places have a lot of it.
Another attendee said, this yard is incredible, especially with what she started with. But as you said before, plan and do the hardscape first. This was a ton of hardscape. Did she do it all at once or in phases?
I don't really know the answer to that. I suspect she did it all at once.
Okay. Another attendee says, I love hydrangeas. I bought several this year. I planted about 13 and also potted some. The potted plants didn't do well. And I'm about 5 minutes from the Georgia State Stadium and 8 minutes from downtown Atlanta. What advice could you give me to keep my hydrangeas growing big, strong, and beautiful? Water.
Hydrangea. Hydra, its own name says water. So you need to water them, especially now, even in the wintertime when you don't see any leaves on it, so you can't see them drooping, you need to water them. So if you don't have an irrigation system, get your hose out there and make sure they're getting water every week and water deeply. That's probably the most important thing. The other thing is, again, do that fertilizer like I just described, do the cow manure and the 10-10-10 in the January, February timeframe. That's when their roots are starting to grow. And then continue to add some fertilizer just a couple times in the, maybe again in April and maybe again in June when they're done blooming, so that they begin to set their blossoms for the next year. And be mindful of when you prune them. And that's a whole, go to our YouTube website, and there's an entire presentation on hydrangeas that Linda Klein did. And she has hundreds of hydrangeas in her backyard and is a true expert at growing hydrangeas, and she grows the most beautiful ones. So take a look at her presentation.
This is the last one for this section. I've heard mondo grass is invasive. Any idea to control it from spreading outside of the desired area? Well,
the dwarf mondo is not, and edging again will keep it in, and the dwarf mondo grows really slowly and it doesn't get very big. But yeah, the bigger mondo is invasive, and I have removed all of my larger mondo grass from my yard. It is so invasive. It's those berries on it. It drops those berries and it just grows everywhere.
Okay, that's
okay. We're going to move on now. Thank you, Lee. Okay, robins, number 3. Look at her home. It's just gorgeous. She purchased her home 25 years ago, and they added on this section and this section on the front as well. She's got 6 acres that backs up to a wildlife estuary. Or is in front of a wildlife estuary, and it's a real hidden gem. You can't see it from the road. It's a designated wildlife habitat because of what she has done with it. She's been a long-term master gardener, and she was an art teacher for 35 years. So she really focuses on the artistic part, but her true love is vegetable gardening. She said she fell in love with gardening when she lived in England as a child. And Robin is, she has a lot of, well, we'll get to in a second, all her vegetable gardening. She loves the element of surprise. So, she's got, you can't see any of her house from the road. This is her driveway coming in. You see all the plants on the sides, all shade loving plants. And she's got a little bit of her own art here. And this is a very unique piece of art up here called a finger over the lens. And you keep going far enough, and voila, here's her home. And this is her front door here. So as you come up the walkway, you will see this wall. And again, the element of surprise, you look over this wall and you see she's got this really gorgeous courtyard down below. And this is their living area down here, their main living area, kitchen, office, etc. So they live around this water, her koi pond or waterfall, and it's just so serene. But Robin's true love is her vegetable garden. She's got 4 4x8 raised beds. She's all organic with neem oil, etc. Picks off the critters by hand. And she reminds us that you really need 4 things. Good location, 8 hours of sun, a good source of water, and good soil to have a successful garden here in Georgia. And I will at this point say that Robin has done multiple vegetable gardening classes, and they are on our YouTube channel. She's done spring vegetables, fall vegetable gardening, herb gardening, and in the spring she's doing a class on water plants. So check out her YouTube videos under the North Fulton Master Gardeners, excuse me. So she's like, grow what you like to eat. So she grows a lot of greens and herbs and squash, and these are her tomatoes. And she had someone build these 8-foot supports for her. And what she does is she attaches a string to the top and then ties the top of the tomato plant to the string just loosely. And then as the tomato plant grows, she pulls on the string to tighten it so that it raises the tomato plant higher and higher. If you're like me, when I grow my tomatoes, they're like laying everywhere. I mean, the vines grow much bigger than those tomato cages will hold. And I thought this was absolutely brilliant. She also uses the same thing for her cucumbers, but she puts a net. You can see this netting in there, and then the cucumbers grow up the netting, and you can just pick the cucumbers off the plant rather than having to make sure they trail properly. And she's got some, I believe this is eggplant in the front. She also likes ground cover. Oh, this is another good ground cover, creeping thyme. Creeping thyme will bloom in the spring. It's edible. It grows very easily. In this situation, she's using it as filler between her pathway, but you can make a whole lawn of it. You can as a lawn alternative. And growing up the side of the wall, this is creeping fig. Now, if you go to Avalon or to the newer section of Alpharetta, you will see a lot of creeping fig growing on the side of the retaining walls there. And it grows very well, very easily. And she's got a little stone crop that she put in the corner for a pop of color. And of course, being a succulent, it grows well in the gravel. She has a whole section of birdhouses. She has 20 birdhouses. This is a pond back here. It's kind of hard to see. That's part of the estuary. And she even has a birdhouse that's shaped just like her house used to be before they added on to it. Which is very cool. And she also has rooms where she can sit and relax in her garden. And she has some elephant ears here, but I will caution you that elephant ears are very invasive. But she also used some to make these, to cast these cement elephant ears that she uses as decoration around her property. And this is a really old grapevine. It was there when they bought the property. It was planted in the 1950s. That's how old this is. So and they wanted to save it. So they built this trellis for it, and it's grown just beautiful. This is a Fatsia plant. I don't know that I've talked about that yet. It is also a wonderful plant for growing in deep shade. And then you can see the ferns that she incorporates and adds a pop of color with a pot with Coleus. That's the word I was trying to think of earlier, is Coleus. Coleus is a great plant for using in shade. I've given up on trying to get flowers to bloom in some of areas of my yard. And there are a million colors of Coleus. So go nuts with Coleus if you've got a shade garden. She has some more rooms that she's recently added to her garden. And again, little areas to sit, and she loves the birds, so she has these bird houses. And she's incorporated a lot of stone. Again, this is a lot of work that they did at the beginning when they first purchased the property to add retaining walls and walkways. And again, remember, they have 6 acres. So stone, stepping stones, and a pop of color every now and then with added hydrangea. And these are some native plants that she has. The southern shield fern is just beautiful. Most native ferns, with the exception of Christmas fern, are deciduous. So they will die back in the wintertime and they'll come back in the spring. So you don't have that green all year round. And this is a American Beautyberry. It's kind of hard to see it in the background, but if you don't have one of these in your yard, you need to get one. They have the coolest berries, groupings of berries right now, this time of the year, and the birds love them. And we get to our last garden, I'll show you one, a picture of one that's when the berries are ripe. She also has a greenhouse. If you're going to put in a greenhouse, be sure you think about water and electricity for the thermostat, and get the kind that has the vented windows, because otherwise it can get hot down here. She grows some of her leaves or greens in her garden, or in her greenhouse, I'm sorry. And she starts many of her seedlings in her greenhouse. And here's her outdoor courtyard. And she wants to remind people that when you put in a koi pond, make them 4 feet deep. Otherwise, the herons will land and they will eat your fish. But if it's 4 feet deep, it's too deep for them to stand in. Some of her plants around here are a chorus. Yeah, I believe this is a pack of Sandra. She has a climbing hydrangea that will bloom at different times of the year, and a in the corner here is a japonica, a Pieris japonica, and this is a chorus. Now, a chorus out in the wild can also be invasive, so be careful with that. Her advice is to use good soil. They brought in a ton of good dirt, manure, mushroom compost, by quality plants. That should go without saying. Native plants as much as possible. We learn from our failures, so don't feel like it was a waste of money if you learn from a failure. Most shrubs need 3 years. Even perennials need 3 years. First year sleep, second year creep, third year leap. Anyway, engage all your senses. My takeaways are that grow the veggies you love to eat. That kind of is obvious too. Incorporate your natives and take a chance. I also want to take an opportunity to hear that to let you know that Robin and her husband Mark published a quarantine cookbook during the quarantine, which is really cool. You can buy it at acapellabooks.com. That's ACAPELLA books.com, and they donate all the proceeds to charity. But they used all fresh vegetables and herbs from their own garden, and it gave them a great project to do during the pandemic. Lee, do we have some questions?
We have a few. What is the best mulch? Pine bark, pine straw, or shredded mulch, which I understand is chopped up pallets that are dyed? I didn't know that. I would think there'd be chemicals on pallets.
I didn't know that either.
I'm not sure that's correct. I'm not sure that's healthy, but
yeah. I don't know that I'm an expert in mulch. A lot of people do like the pine straw. It's easy to spread. It's easy, relatively inexpensive. It does give it a nice fresh look if you want to do it twice a year. Personally, I use the chopped up mulch. I assumed that it was shredded bark. I like it because it doesn't wash away as much as like those nuggets. And that after you put it down a couple of times, you don't have to refresh it as often. Whereas the pine needles, you have to refresh at least every year, if not twice a year. But I get a lot of mileage out of my shredded mulch. There is something about cedar mulch that people like, and I can't remember what it is. So that's the best I can do.
okay. My soil is full of clay and rock. How did these master gardeners overcome this for their prolific plantings?
A lot of digging. Perhaps some of them hired help. And as you saw in one of them so far, both Nilda and Robin brought in a ton of compost, good topsoil, cow manure. And I hear you about the digging because I bought a home that didn't have a lot of landscaping, and I ripped out some of the shrubs at the side of my house and had to dig in there to create a pollinator garden. And I've got bricks and rocks and, wires that go nowhere. They're just little pieces of wire. And I bought good garden soil from the big box store. And, you know, don't buy the cheap stuff. It's crap. There's no rules or regulations. You know, anybody can call anything garden soil and sell it. And a lot of it is garbage. So buy a name brand that you trust would be my recommendation. And if you know somebody with a horse, you know, maybe you can get some horse manure, make sure it's 6 months old. Or you can buy that at the box store too. I like Black Cow. I always have a bag of that hanging around somewhere.
Okay. Two people have asked this. You mentioned a good shade plant. They didn't catch the name and they said Acuba.
Oh, Acuba, A-C-U-B-A, Acuba. It's a really good shade plant. It withstands deep shade. It will get kind of big, so you might have to trim it back. It's mostly a green leaf with yellow flecks in it. And there are other kinds of varieties that have different colors and different variegations. Fatsia is another great one for deep shade. And I did point that out in one of the slides. And that's F-A-T-S-I-A, Fatsia.
And the, what was the first one? The
Acuba, A-C-U-B-A, like Cuba with an A in front of it.
It's very easy to do a cutting of that one also. Okay, in the veggie garden, what material was used as a frame for the tomatoes and cucumbers to climb on? Also, is the raised bed made of cedar? How long will it last before needing to be replaced?
So I'll take the easy one first. Her frame structure is made out of aluminum. Regarding the raised beds, you want to make sure it's not old treated wood. She did put a liner in hers with holes in the bottom, but kind of lining the sides. I don't know if it was cedar or not. It might have been. And that's as far as I can answer.
Okay. The very last one, Heidi actually gave us some more information regarding mulch. And
oh, good.
Pine straw or wood chips, which is best? That depends. Both help keep weeds from sprouting and help moisture retention. Here are some pros and cons for you to consider. Pine straw, it's cheaper, easier to spread, lasts longer, harder to blow leaves off in fall, adds a little more acid to the soil, which can be good or bad depending on what's planted under it. Less likely to wash down a slope in hard rain, but very slippery if you have to climb on it. Wood chips, better source of nutrients for the soil, better moisture retention, decomposes faster, which is better for the soil, pro and con, keeps soil warmer in winter and cooler in the summer, fades color faster, repels insects better, comes in a variety of colors. Black makes plants pop, but fades the fastest. In summary, if you have a large area with very few perennials and bushes, pine straw might be your best choice. However, around a lot of perennials and shrubbery, mulch will improve the soil, keep them warmer in winter and cooler in summer. And Heidi is a master gardener from Forsyth County. Thank you, Heidi.
Yes, thank you very much. I know we have a lot of master gardeners watching, so thank you. Thank you for chiming in. I've only been at this for 4 years, so I still have a lot to learn. And I learned from you all. And I learned so much from these 4 master gardeners. Elizabeth, we're going to wrap up with her, and I'm going to go fast because I'm already running over. Hers I call color contrast because she really took advantage of these different colors. And she has an acre on Windward Lake. Sadly, she moved to Florida last year. But she said I could still present her garden because the garden is still there. Somebody else owns it. Again, she has her favorite plants. You will see a lot of the hydrangeas, the hostas, ferns, camellias, paniculata, evergreen shrubs, and drift roses for places of sun. And she had a really artsy family, so she likes to decorate with plants. So in the front yard, you'll see these, what are they called? Purple heart and lemon balm sedum. Again, this contrast of colors really makes it pop. Then she's got this little delicate ivy that runs across the top of the stone. I mean, it's just so delicately placed. And this is sum and substance hostas. They will get quite large, but again, they're kind of that chartreuse color, and it contrasts nicely with the darker green background. And how's that for a focal point? So this is her backyard. She's got the beautiful lake that you can't compete with that as a focal point. So everything else is just a sideshow. Her challenge was, again, the lot was relatively empty. They had to bring in a lot of soil, and they had an ongoing challenge of keeping the deer and other critters out. But look at that. I mean, she's added all of this vegetation to make such a beautiful and interesting garden. So this picture was taken in June, and you see a lot of variety of size, shape, color, and textures. And I'll go in a little greater detail. This picture she had taken in May. And so this is her azaleas with that wakabisu variety with that beautiful pink, all in mass. So some closer up photos here. Very interesting plant called Edgeworthia, which is very fragrant. It blooms early in the spring, also known as a paper bush, but it has a different texture. It's got the bigger leaf. So you contrast it, for example, with the Gardenia, which has the very fine leaves, and with the purple pixie loropetalum. This is an annual, the Persian shield, and she's got some hydrangeas and hostas surrounding it. I really loved and was fascinated by this combination. So this is the ajuga, the word I couldn't remember earlier, which is a great ground cover. And this one is called Burgundy Glow. And look at how nicely that pairs with the purple pixie and how it pulls the purple out of the ajuga and creates a nice little grouping. And here's another little grouping with the hostas surrounding, again, the hydrangea. We've seen that applied in other places. And I think it makes a lovely little gathering. So this is Mona lavender, another unique plant. It's a very dark green, and if you flip the leaf over, it's black on the backside. This picture was taken in June, and it's just has a few blossoms. I'm looking at mine right now in the backyard, and it is loaded with purple blossoms. So it continues to blossom the whole season, and it gets more, and mine, it seemed to just get more and more blossoms as the season went on. So I am sold on this Mona lavender, but again, it's a annual plant. This is a unique new plant called Phoshedra, and it is a hybrid between variegated ivy and fatsia. Remember, I pointed out fatsia earlier. Fatsia has a very thick, waxy leaf. And so this Phoshedra has a thick, waxy-like leaf, yet it looks like a giant variegated ivy. And it grows nicely, and it just adds a unique color. And then she has the variegated fatsia. So here's the fatsia, not in the solid green that I showed you at Robin's yard, but in the variegation. And I think that looks really cool too. I see these around town sometimes. Hydrangea, she has beautiful endless summer. This is called Mother's Love, both blue and pink on the same plant. She's got a lace cap here. One of my favorites is this little quick fire because of how brightly white it is. It is a panicle, so it needs a little more sun than the regular hydrangeas. The regular hydrangeas only need, a couple hours of sun. Panicles like, 4+. This is a hydrangea called Pistachio. And this is Incredible, which is really big, kind of like the mop heads, only it's actually an arborescence or smooth hydrangea. This is called Ami Pasquer with the pink one. And then this is just another blue endless hydrangea. And again, look at, these are called Blushing Bride. Can't you just imagine a bride walking down the aisle carrying this beautiful light blue color? My favorite is Fuji Waterfall. I love this plant, and I still haven't gotten one yet, but I will get one. And then her oak leaf is called Sem's Beauty. Oak leaf is a native to Georgia. And then there's Big Daddy with again, these giant heads on it. I got to get one of those too. And this little one is called Wedding Gown. And how appropriate, set by the Buddha statue with the little ferns behind it. It's such a, Zen position of her garden. She has created some rooms as well. She's added this nice little deck with the vine over it, which I think is Carolina jessamine. And here you get to see her blushing bride hydrangeas from another angle. Here's another aucuba. Again, this is a deep shade area, and here's her variegated fatsia, and again, a little ring of hostas around her lovely garden art. And there is Elizabeth resting again in another one of her little rooms with a variety of hostas and ferns and hydrangeas, and the Shedra is right behind her. And in the pot, she has some, I think it's called Japanese fern, Japanese painted fern. I have found you want to keep that in a pot because it spreads really quickly. And here's our American Beautyberry, which is a native. And this picture does not do it justice as to how brilliantly purple these groups of purple berries are, and the birds love them. They're very good for them. And apparently there are medicinal things that you can do with it. Some of the ladies yesterday were telling me you can create a salve with the berries and put it on bites and burns and scratches, and it's supposed to be amazing. And she also has a lot of garden art, this nice little birdhouse and a big stork about 4 feet tall. She's giant herons. I think those are herons. Little angel. And she also has an old Japanese maple. Again, they grow really slow. But they are beautiful. This is the only patch of sun that she gets. So it's kind of a view from the lake. So it's closer. Getting out of the trees. She has a drift rose here, a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them, I think. And one of my other favorite plants, peonies, that here should get a lot of sun. I have a couple peonies for 5 years, and I've gotten 1 blossom off of them because I don't think they get enough sun. She has her panicle hydrangeas because those need more sun. And some unique plants that she has here is the Ascot rainbow Euphorbia. That's this plant right here. And it has these really fun looking flowers, if you can call them that shoot out of them in the spring. And then the new growth comes from the bottom, and it is rainbow in color. And then this, by June, it's kind of settled down and looks like this. But it's been a really fun plant. I have one in a pot in my backyard, and it's fun to watch it change throughout the year. And she also wanted to point out the Radicand's variegated Gardenia. It's a little tiny leaf, and it's variegated, and it is a small plant. A lot of gardenias get large. So she said, if you need a plant that's small and will stay small, this is one that she highly recommends. And then she loves her June hosta. She said they're slug resistant. And that's a good reminder that when you go shopping for hostas, look for ones that are slug resistant. And I believe you can Google slug resistant hostas online and get a list of them. She has more fun garden art. As I was there taking pictures, the sun was starting to go down, so you can see I'm losing some of the light, but it made a beautiful contrast against the setting sun. And here's our Zen balance, and then Mother Nature. Her advice is to understand what you're planting. Again, read the labels and make sure you're planting the right plant in the right place. I keep a little notebook, and in my notebook, I put, every time I buy a plant, I put the label in here so I can always look back and remind myself of how much sun, how much water, when to fertilize, how to prune, etc. And my book is almost full, so it's almost time for a new notebook for Sandy. And she said also to expect failures, and not everything's going to live. Don't feel like you didn't do the best you could. We all, even the master gardeners, I regularly have plants die. I don't always know why. And to apply the key elements of design, color, texture, contrast. Tree trunks, again, those tree trunks in her thing were really beautiful. The multiple shades of green. And then, of course, Mother Nature is just beautiful on her own. And Lee, do I have any questions?
We just have, I think, 2 questions. What term did you use for the second year of growing? First was creeping and the last was leaping.
First year sleep, second year creep, third year leap.
Oh.
So it's sleep, creep, leap. Yeah, that first year, it's putting down its roots as it should. So don't push it too hard.
Okay. How did she get her Laura Petalum full sun to look so healthy with her shade plants? Hosta also, dear Candy, I'm impressed.
Yeah. She probably stood in her yard and chased them away herself. Her Laura Petalum, I have found that Laura Petalum will grow decently in the shade, and this variety, Purple Pixie, will stay, pixie, so it stays smaller. So, I have been pleasantly surprised about things that I can grow in non-full sun. So you just have to experiment and try. If it doesn't, not doing well, move it.
That's it for questions, Sandy.
Okay, great. So just to wrap up, if you have questions, you can always call the North Fulton Extension line. And we've got some great publications on the UGA. If you forget the link, just type in UGA publications and it will bring you to a search page. You can enter any keyword and it'll pop you up any topic that you want to hear. This wraps it up for our fall lecture series. You can see any of the past classes by going to, just go to YouTube and then type in North Fulton Master Gardeners and our page will pop up. Click on it and you can see all of the classes we've done. I think we have 50 of them up there now. And our future classes are, drum roll, 2023 Spring Lecture Series, Spring Wildflowers, Growing Figs. Ian Matthews, one of our newer Master Gardeners, has 100 figs in his yard. He is obsessed with figs and he's really good at them. Our agent, our new agent, is going to talk about insects of the garden. We have a presentation on ferns, and then Robin is going to do plants for water gardens. Obviously, she has some experience with that. So you can watch our website, which is www.nfmg.net, for when they will be posted. I think registrations will begin in December. You can sign up for our email, although I think if you registered for this class, you will automatically get emails about the next series. And then if you wish to support our endeavors, because we do demonstration gardens, we teach children, we do the virtual classes and we do in-person classes. We appreciate your donations. You can donate through Amazon Smile, PayPal, Facebook, and we have a plant sale called Give and Garden, where you can go to the link here. And right now we have a fall bulb sale going on, and then that'll go till November 1st. And then we'll switch to a holiday plant sale. And 50% of those proceeds will go towards our mission, which is education. We also we provide scholarships for horticulture students at both UGA and Gwinnett Tech. And we want to thank our promotional partners for getting the word out on our classes, and our media partners who do wonderful articles. And of course, please remember to fill out the survey that will pop up right after the thing closes off. And I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you were as inspired as I was.